Winter decided to make one last appearance with a nice snowstorm, ice storm, and wind chill factors down in the single digits. Oh boy. Two days later, we were back to spring. As a matter of fact, the forecast for the next 10 days was going to be 60s, 70s, and the evenings weren't going to go below about 40. So it was time for the insulation to come off. We needed to move over into spring mode now. These bees were out buzzing around, and there were even some flowers in bloom. I chose early morning to remove the hive covers, and the reason for that is the bees were also making orientation flights, and I wanted them to get used to the look of the hive without the insulation, without the awnings, without the secondary reducers, so they had a good idea where their home was. And this way, when they ventured out in the morning and took their orientation flight, they'd see what their hive looked like. It didn't take long before they were out in force, and I even saw flowers in our garden with bees on them, and I even found a few of them coming back to the hive with pollen. However, resources were a little sparse, and they were a little defensive, and I was met with, a stinger in the eyelid, so I decided to suit up for what I was about to do next. It was time to check for brood. Time for the insulation boxes to come off, the spacers, and pull a few frames out and see if the queen was starting to lay. We knew that the pollen patties were being eaten, and that was a good sign that there was brood in there, but you really actually want to see the brood, and it was time.
Well, that's interesting.
I had put a full pollen patty in this hive last week because I knew they were strong, and it was all but gone, maybe a little 1-inch by 1-inch section. So I had a good suspicion that when I went down in there would be brood.
There we go. Still lots of honey on this guy. But what I'm more interested in seeing is, do we have any brood popping out? They're just a little concerned that I'm in here. Upper super is just solid, still full of honey. They did very well coming through the winter. Pollen. Some cleaned out cells. Good. Brood. Beautiful, beautiful brood. I'm not gonna sit here and dig for a queen. A couple little drone cells in the middle, but nothing really obnoxious. Come on, girls. I don't want to get anything too disturbed here. So you guys did just fine with the winter.
There was no point digging further into the hive. If we had brood, even if it was in the upper medium super, then we were in good shape. There's risks of ripping a hive apart too early, and you could always end up squishing the queen. So we had brood, and we had food. Time to move on to the next hive.
I don't think we have to worry about adding any feed to this hive. They have a massive amount of sugar on them. Or I should say honey. Sugar syrup, whatever. They're really full. So I am simply going to put the shim back on. And switch them over to a standard inner cover, where we can put a bottle of sugar water on them if need be.
The only reason that I'm leaving the shims in place is because we still have some sugar bricks in there and pollen cake at the top of the hive, and that takes up a little bit of room. Once those are gone, it's time to get rid of that shim, otherwise they'll start building comb on the inside of the inner cover. Our second Mesopotamia hive I kind of skipped in this video. When I opened it up, it was packed full of food and packed full of bees, and it didn't look like it would be an easy situation moving everything around and getting down to doing a serious inspection. Everything looked very, very healthy. So on to this hive. This originally, our Atlantis hive, was a very weak hive, but they certainly seemed to be coming back, and it was time to go in there and see if their queen was indeed laying. If I saw eggs and brood, I'd be happy.
Well, now, this is the hive that we had the most questions about. This is our first chance really to come in here since the fall. And we'll see what we find in here. For starters, more honey than I thought, that's for sure. So their supplies are good. Well, let's see if we can't find any brood. I have a feeling if we find brood, it would be in this direction. This is where they seem to have been clustering. Well, of course, they were clustering down the bottom super, so I don't know. Lo and behold, brood. Good worker brood. I'm happy with this. Okay, these girls are on their way. Plenty of food, good laying queen. I mean, I can't tell how super she is without a full inspection, but there's honey, there's brood, they're eating the pollen. I'm happy. So we're moving them into spring mode with the standard inner cover for now. There's always hive beetles. As I mentioned on the last video, I have something in store for those hive beetles that they are not going to like. It's a little trick that I believe it was Cayman Reynolds that first showed it on his channel. But there is a surefire way to massacre the hive beetles without endangering the bees. I mean, never really liked the oil traps because sometimes the oil would leak and, you know, oil would be lethal to the bees. Now, one of the reasons I'm switching over is I intend to start wet feeding these hives in the very near future. And to do that, I can't really have the screens on. I tried that last fall, it wasn't too cool. But that's good. 3 hives, 3 strong hives. Who could ask for anything more? So we're in summer mode. Well, not entirely. The shims are still on. There's still some feed in there, but once again, from Buzz Park. See you next week.